You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hi, I'm Doug Draper, and with me today is my co-host Pete Mento, and we are Global Trade This Week. Global Trade This Week is sponsored by Cap Logistics. This is one of the only forward-thinking podcasts where we talk about international trade, transportation. We always like to sprinkle in some economics. I think we'll hit that today. But the key thing is we're always looking forward, Pete. That's what you're good at, and I follow along the best I can. So we're going to grab a couple of topics each. We're going to banter back and forth, and we're going to solve the problems of the world. If not today, Pete, at least on another one of these shows, I promise. Thanks. So anyway, with of course. So with that, Pete, you're the go-to guy. We decided we flipped a coin, and you got heads, so you're going first. What you got today?
Okay, well, let's just start with a controversy right off the bat. We're getting a lot of economic data right now regarding surpluses and regarding export volumes out of the U.S. And of course, I'm particularly interested in China and whether or not the protracted trade war that we've been engaged in is really a win. Has it been a win for the U.S.? Has it been a win for China? What did we get out of it? Originally, we were supposed to be able to point to a pretty big surplus of exports to the agriculture market, farmers in America, but people just didn't decide to follow the rules. So unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And China's kind of got off on their own way and disregarded the promises that they have made. When we look at the numbers now, exports to China are certainly doing quite well. So are imports into the U.S. Did these 25%, 15%, did these tariffs really change anything? And in the end, did America really win? Well, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that President Trump has gone through his period in time in office where he had a chance to make a change. And unfortunately, what he had put together was just destroyed when COVID hit. And then now that COVID's over with and we have a new executive coming into the White House, I just don't really see the Biden administration really pitching a fit over the way that we handled that past trade war and saying, hey, let's continue to bear down on these guys and get what we want. I think they're probably going to use things like these tariffs in place of carbon footprints and try to negotiate something out, which I'm all for. I want the tariffs to go away, but we did this for a reason, man. There was a problem, and that's the alleged theft of Chinese companies of American IP. So I don't think we want a damn thing out of it, Doug.
Yeah, you may have answered the question I was going to pose is, in a war, you get so into it because it is a tariff war. What was its purpose out of the gate, right? Because I was thinking about that and I'm like, okay, what was the origin, right? I'm sure people are like, trade war and let's get them and let's go. But I can't even remember what the purpose was.
Yeah, the purpose was mainly to attack the ongoing theft of global IP, not just American IP, by Chinese corporations. This almost systematic cyber theft of ideas and technology. And to do it in a way that would also open up an opportunity for the US and China to maybe coexist a little better in a free trade environment. But the first and foremost thing was to try to stop them from stealing.
Yeah. So I guess I would my take would be, I don't even know what quarter we're entering. I'm trying to think of a football or a basketball sporting analogy, right? So are we winning? I don't think we've won. I don't think and I say that because there's not an end right now. I don't think there's a clear demarcation to say that the race is over. And I'd say, are we winning? I don't know. You look at it, you look at the tremendous amount of volumes that's coming into the coast. All right. So America's importing more. All right. Is that a win or a loss? And a lot of companies have decided to absorb a lot of the tariffs through, just reduce profits. It's not a blanket statement to say all of our pricing for our commodities is going up. So there's been some absorption of profits by companies to offset, and we're importing more stuff than we ever have. At least that's what the statistics will show you. So I don't know, man. I really don't know how to answer that one. Part of me says we did not win, and part of me says the game's not over yet. So let's see how it goes.
You make a good point about the game not being over with yet, but here's another great metaphor for you. Imagine the head coach of this game for the U.S. side didn't want to be in the game to begin with, didn't like the idea of the game, and has beginning to realize that there could be a game in the future he could win by throwing this one. And that's about as close to politics as you're ever going to get me to talk about in public. But I really do believe that we're at that point now where you've got a new crew who's going to come in and say, you know what? The last guy you were dealing with was nuts. What can I do to make this better? And it's sort of good cop, bad cop. The good cop's in there now with the pack of cigarettes and the warm coffee trying to make things better. And I really do think from the bottom of my heart that if there was ever anything globally that this new administration could use to leverage themselves as the good guys, it's going to be the trade war. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to get drunk a lot of weekends between here and the end of this administration, because I have a feeling that as crazy as my life has been because of the 301s and 232s, it's going to be even weirder in the next 4 years. Everybody wanted vanilla. Now we're going to have chocolate. Everybody's drinking Pepsi. Now we want Coke. The shift in the way things are going to be, I think, is going to be positively incredible. And with that, I'm excited to hear your first topic today, buddy.
All right, man. So my one topic, I know we talk about forward thinking, which is what we're going to do, but I have to reference a situation that happened last week that kind of went viral, if you will. It was the Ocean Network Express and the APUS vessel that, had some monumental situations out there in sea, Holy cow. So here's the point of this. You start looking at all the statistics, right? 19 plus or minus, and things change every day and whatnot, but you got 1,900 plus or minus containers that went overboard. 50 of them were hazmat. And you look at the perspective of, well, what's the average been in the last 3 years with container losses for the year? And it's 7, depends on who you're asking. And, I received a statistic from the World Shipping Council. They said the average, was 700, 780, something like that. So 2.5 times of the damage, that you've had loss, not damage and loss in one sitting. So, this cargo is not going to be available for months, right? It's going back to Kobe, Japan. And by the time they peel the onion back and figure out what's going on and figure out what's happening, if your cargo was on this, if your inventory was on this boat, you're kind of screwed, right? You're not going to see it for months. And my point with all this is that, the biggest thing that's going to happen with all this, Pete, is nothing. Nothing's going to transpire. Nobody's going to do anything different. It's going to be a big splash, So here's what's going to happen, right? You're going to have some executive. They're going to go to somebody in their legal department and says, make sure our contracts say this, that, or the other, so we're covered. The quote unquote pandemic clause that everybody's putting in. And there'll be somebody that says, hey, let's make sure our sourcing strategies and alternative sourcing, make sure they're on track, right? And so somebody will check a box and say, yeah, we're moving in that direction. And so it may create a little bit of a push in the big picture of looking for alternative sourcing strategies. But in the real big picture, it's a fun story to have on the news, but not a whole hell of a lot's going to be changed in the way that we source products, import products, or move products from overseas. So the last thing, Pete, you're phenomenal with analogies. So this is the one I have for this one, right? So when gas and fuel is through the roof, right? And you're at the gas station and you get out of your car and you're like, holy crap, $3.50 for a gallon or $4, wherever you are. And you're like, God, you put in your gas tank and you're sitting there and you wait and you're like, man, maybe I should get an electric car. Maybe I should bike more to work. Maybe I should carpool. And you look at the gas, you're like, damn, that was expensive. And then you hear Justin Bieber come on the radio and you're like, hey, is that the new Bieber song? Like it's in a moment, it's important, but it's not significant enough to really change the buying habits and the sourcing strategies of the general public out there. So anyway, big story, big splashy story. I don't think anything's really going to come of it. What do you think?
Oh, man. So, we both talked about this. My next topic kind of collides into this. So I'll wait there for a minute. But we've both been in this business a long time, and we have both seen people just get absolutely worked by a marine casualty. I mean, they get this phone call and they're like, what? And then they run up the chain of command, but you're right. Nothing changes. I can't tell you how many times I had a client, we had to call them and say, you've got a general average claim, you've got this, you got that. Like, oh my God. And then you go in there 6 months later to try to right the ship. Don't do anything. And then the carriers are in such good shape with the way that they've been able to limit their liability and put things offshore. And it's just preposterous, man. I'm with you on this in that there's so many things we do in this business that if we just put a little bit of thought into and tried to work on it, we can make it better. And that goes all the way from the ship owners, ship operators, freight forwarders, NVOCCs, all the way down to the importers. It just makes me want to smack the hell out of them, dude. It really does. How many times do you have to screw up before you realize there's a better way to do this?
I would agree. And I know this topic.
Yeah. Go ahead, Doug.
No, I was about to say this jives well into your next topic. I mean, it's almost one and the same. So you go for it. I want to see hear more about maritime and insurance.
When I was 18 years old, because of a number of very, very stupid and lazy decisions, I ended up having nowhere to go to college. I applied to a number of schools that did not accept me. And I was fortunate enough, because of athletics mostly, that I got into a Merchant Marine Academy. I went to Maine Maritime Academy in Castine, Maine. It is the middle of nowhere. It is a desperate, horrible place to get an education physically. It's probably the smartest place to get an education professionally. I went to college for 4 years to learn how to drive a ship and operate the cargo on it. I was miserable at it. I was terrible at it. But I did graduate. I eventually got a license, blah, 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 blah. When I was there, I remember constantly being asked, what's your first responsibility? What's your first responsibility? And I learned my first responsibility is to other people on my ship. My second responsibility is to other crews on other vessels in danger. My third responsibility is to the safety of my vessel. My fourth responsibility is the safety of any other vessel at sea. My fifth responsibility is to you guessed it, cargo. So when I was on the way, if we had a fire, we couldn't call 911, dude. Like, we had to put it out. And if there was something that went wrong on board the vessel, we did everything we could to responsibly save the cargo. But we were more concerned for human life. And if that got in the way, too bad, right? So I hear your topic, right, which is this: what's going to change? I haven't been on a ship in 30-something years, and nothing's changed. It's the same. I mean, there's a different attitude towards safety of the men and women on board. It gets safer and safer, I think, every year to be a merchant mariner. But as far as this attitude of how are we going to, fairly distribute the inequity of a marine loss, I don't think anything's really changed. And you have been in this game a long time too, and we have sold people freight. And whenever we come up to that insurance conversation, right? Like, so hey, listen, how you set for marine insurance? And they're like, it's taken care of. When I was at Expeditors, we had people whose job it was to focus and pinpoint just how bad of a response that was for you. And all they did was sell insurance. And I listened to them a lot. And man, I'm telling you, I never moved a container in my life, but they scared the hell out of me with what this could look like. I mean, why is it that people in this business do not buy insurance?
I don't know. I kind of equate it a little bit to, going to get a rental car, right? I think that people feel that they're kind of being hustled a little bit. I don't know. For me, you fill all the forms out, you sign it, and you're like, hey, Pete, how about that insurance for the car? I'll tell you what, here's how life is so easy if you get in a wreck, yada, yada, yada. Every time I got it covered. My insurance has got it covered, right? And it feels like you're being hustled because you got a good deal on the car, and then all of a sudden you're paying twice as much. So I think some people feel that they're being hustled to some degree. And I don't think that is the intent at all. There's genuine people out there saying, this is going to be catastrophic and you need to take a look at this. But I think the perception is going to the counter and getting insurance on your rental car. And for that, I think that there needs to be somebody to blow it up and have a paradigm shift in how they manage and sell insurance. I'm not an insurance guy, so I don't really know what that is. I know the insurance industry is uber conservative. there's got to be some disruptor out there that's going to take a different approach to insurance. That's going to make people say it's worth it's worth it for me and my company to purchase this. And like I said, I don't know. Is it a refund if it's not used? Is it, I don't know, but there needs to be a disruptor in some category, in this category, in order for somebody to take a different approach on insurance. Otherwise, you and I are going to fast forward a year, 2 years, 3 years, and we're going to have the same conversation.
Why aren't carriers making it mandatory? Right? Why aren't they making?
That's a great point.
Mandatory for certain values, types, and conditions of cargo. I don't know why. I would think that might make people say, okay, hold on. I understand you want me to make this mandatory. I'm going to show you my marine insurance policy and how that manages this risk for me. Maybe that's the way of doing it. But we pride ourselves on being the two dudes that get on the webcam once a week and say, here's what we think is going to happen. And it makes me so frustrated to have to hear what you just said, what's changed and what's going to change. And man, nothing's going to change. We can have this conversation again in 5 years, and the state of this entire industry for marine insurance is probably going to be the same. And the attitude of shippers is going to be the same. And, you get what you deserve, man. I hate to sound so harsh, but if you continually see what happens to these other people and you decide not to do something about it, well, then who's the idiot?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. Anyway, we're on the same page with that one.
We got one more topic this week, and I'm kind of glad that the ones in the middle mesh so well. Gave us a reason to both bitch and complain into the camera. But
I know. Yes. And that was complete. Yeah. So the last one, I'm just going to cut to the chase. First quarter, second quarter, logistics wise, it's going to be an absolute shit show. If they need to edit that one out, but it's going to be, I don't want to say disastrous because that's negative. It's going to be incredibly challenging by so many different ways because of these reasons, Pete. Number one is you have the returns, right? Coming back. The vaccine, that's what I was thinking of, the vaccine, right? So first of all, you got the vaccine that's coming through, and that's paramount, right? That's going to take everything. It's going to take some capacity. It's almost like stepping aside and watching a parade. That is going to get priority in all kinds of different levels, right? So if there's certain product that's moving through the parcel supply chain, which is where that's going in the first go around, that freight is not stopping. It has to go somewhere, right? Yes, the vaccine's moving through, but I still have a business to do, and that freight needs to go somewhere. So it's going to get pushed to other service levels like LTL. And then LTL will get pushed to truck, and truck may get pushed to rail. So it's this cascade effect that's going to push more volume into these networks, which is going to create a tremendous amount of capacity issues. And kind of the final mile, I had a client that was doing some deliveries into grocery warehouses. And because of the grocery industry and how things are going crazy with consumer binds in grocery stores, they can't get appointments for 10 days out. So you're an LTL carrier and you're like, hey man, I'm trying to get this stuff off my dock. Your company can't take this grocery warehouse can't take it for 10 days. I'm going to charge you storage, or I'm going to ship it back, or whatever. It's just getting pinched. So that shipment to that grocery store had nothing to do with the vaccine. It was never going on the parcel environment, but it's getting pinched because it's so nuts. So that's one. The second one is the monumental concept of returns in the e-commerce world, right? There's never been a returns situation in the history of mankind that's going to hit our plates in January. Even if it's a percentage of returns, the amount of volume going out in consumers in e-commerce is absolutely staggering. And here's the problems with that, right? Number one is nobody knows how to return anything, right? So they're going to put it in a shoebox, Sally's shoebox from their kid that had a pair of Skechers from years ago, and they're going to put a bunch of duct tape around it, and they're going to handwrite something on the box, and they're going to put it outside. And the carrier, or in some instances, it's going to be seasonal drivers are going to show up in their car, and they're going to pick up this thing that looks like they don't know what it looks like, and they're going to be explicitly told by the carriers, do not pick it up unless it meets these criteria. So they're going to show up, they're going to make a judgment call, and they're going to drive away. They're not going to pick it up. Then these phone calls are going to come in. It's going to be a mess. And so there's going to be a lot of frustration. There's going to be a lot of problems. And I think those are two of the big things that's going to make the return process in January, just horrible. And Pete, and for our listeners out there, if you heard our second episode, there was something called BOPIS that came out, right? Buy online, pick up in store. I know you love it. You love it. So here's what's going to happen in January. And I haven't figured out if it's a world tour yet or if it's just, kind of a thing, but it's going to be called Risker, right? It's pronounced the same way as Whisker. And that stands for return in store, quick refund, right? Because you're like, I don't have time to deal with this. I don't know what to do. And one of the groups that's phenomenal at doing this is Kohl's and the partnership with Amazon. This isn't a story. I was literally in Kohl's on Saturday, and it was a train of people walking through with their stuff loose, going to the back of the store. By design, that's where you go to get your milk in a grocery store. That's where you go to return your Amazon and Kohl's. And they say, here you go, return it. And you know what? They get an immediate refund. So they don't have to deal with the packaging and the crap and calling the carrier, all the things that you've spoken to on a couple of shows in the past. So we had BOPIS in January or in December, and we're going to have Risker in January. So there you go, Pete. What do you think?
Dude, I'm digging this conversation. Okay, so I love giving presents at Christmas like anybody else, but like most men, I suck at sizes. And I, you ask your wife, you ask your girlfriend, you ask your daughter, what size are you? They never tell you the truth, or they do tell you the truth, but sizes are different and all these different things. And I've had to return a lot of stuff lately, and you're in my head, bro. You're in my head the entire time this is going on. So I play the sneaker game. For those of you who are not sneakerheads, I wait on the sneaker app. I wait on the Adidas Confirmed app, and I try to buy these really limited edition sneakers. And then if I do, and they're worth more than I want to wear them, I resell them, usually for some pretty nice cash. And there's a lot of marketplaces that are set up for that. And I got 2 pairs of shoes that I wanted to wear. Didn't need the other one. Adidas, my money was back in 24 hours, but I had to drop it off at the, I don't know if it was UPS or FedEx, but I had to drop it off at one of them. But as soon as, like you said, as soon as they went beep, the money was back in my account like a day later. And I was like, oh, Doug's going to talk about this. And then the second one, I bought something for my daughter from one of these, like, I don't know how to explain it. It was like, we know Big Brother, every little step you take, every little move you make, social media things. I'm like, oh, my kid would love that. So I buy it for her. It gets here China Post under the Chapter 86 de minimis rule. It is an absolute piece of trash. It's not, it wouldn't fit an elf. And now I got to try to send it back. And you know what they told me? They said, tell us what size you want instead. We'll just send it for free. How little do these things cost? Now I got this thing I don't need, I don't care about. I couldn't sell it, I couldn't give it away. But the one that drove me nuts is I had to pray at the altar of Draper last week when I finally decided to make the move to buy myself my Apple HomePod because the new generation is out and I'm a total Apple guy, start to finish. I go there, I buy the one I want. I do total BOPIS, bro. Online, tell them when I'm going to be there. I show up at the mall with my mask on. Some dude in dreadlocks and a pair of $500 tennis shoes hands me my, my HomePod. Mm-hmm. I bring it home. I open it up and I'm like, man, this color sucks. So I take a look at it. I'm like, I don't want white. I want the space age gray because that's just how I roll. I'm a total dark side guy. I get in touch with Apple. They're like, yeah, just bring it back. And I so in the same day, bought it online, picked up in store, and then I riskered it. I did both of your things, and it probably from start to finish, 2 hours of time. And I got the iPod minis too, or the HomePod minis. I returned one of them. Beep. Money was back in my account in a couple of hours. I think you're right. I think that the answer to this big problem is us getting off of our lazy asses and being part of and are we different because we work in this industry and we get that's probably the smartest, best way to do it? Are people going to bitch anyway?
Well, I think it's people are going to bitch anyway, but I think people are going to realize that, just like you said, be a little bit part of the solution and your life will be a lot easier, because if you are going to wrap something in a shoebox with duct tape and expect that to go back through the system and be processed, you're pretty naive in how things work in the world. But if you're willing to go back to the store and have the immediacy of my money is in my bank, and oh, by the way, I'm there and maybe I'll buy something. I mean, that marketing ploy and strategy with retailers is going to resound, if you will, and it's going to happen. So,
well, that's the part you neglected to mention about going to Kohl's, my friend. When you go there and you return it, what else do? They give you a coupon for some crazy percent off if you spend it right then and there. It's like, oh, someone's got a little money they didn't expect to have. Why don't you go pick yourself a pair of blue jeans or PJs or get yourself another George Foreman grill? I don't know. And you're right there with the coupon.
Hell yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, Kohl's is getting people into those stores, man. I got to believe this is working out.
Yeah. Well, for this week, man, that's all I got.
Yet again, Doug Draper forces me to learn another an acronym. Right? He proves to be correct, thus pissing me off endlessly. He puts that an acronym into my vocabulary, where I am now using it and thinking it. And on weekends, when I have better things to do, I end up thinking about you. So I hope you're satisfied, man. I hope you're fully satisfied.
Yes. And I have to compliment Pete. I got to compliment you because usually in this on our show, you throw in some type of rock and roll reference. And I wanted to let you know, I did hear the Police reference that you made earlier. So I want to let you know I was listening and I appreciate that.
One of the most overrated and at the same time underrated bands in the history of modern music. I'm sure right now that our short bus of elves back at the studio is like the Police. There was a group called the Police. There was some guy with a silly name called Sting. Did they have a DJ? Yeah. Did he play with Diplo? No. I'm telling you right now, Keenan, I need you to go onto your whatever platform it is kids use these days, because apparently my Apple Music isn't cool. And you need to listen to as much of Sting and the Police as possible. I would do it probably with a very nice Cabernet. I imagine it's getting cold there right now. This is definitely an in-your-house dance kind of stuff. And I'll just leave it at that. But, Doug, I think we're showing just how old and gray I am by talking about this music. Exactly. So, yeah. So with that, everybody, here's another edition of Global Trade This Week in the can. I love this conversation. I love the fact that Doug managed yet again to get into my head. Thanks, dude. As always, Global Trade This Week is brought to you by the good people of Cap Logistics. To learn more of the amazing services they provide, please check them out on the web at www.caplogistics.com. Do yourself a favor and check out Doug Draper's podcast, Uptime Logistics. And if you have a chance, check out mine as well, TradeGeek Podcast. I can't say between the two of us, you'll be as informed as you need to be, but I think it's a pretty good start. And with that, thank you, Doug, for another great week. And thanks to everybody back in the control room. We'll see you again next week with another episode.